was born in Somerville, New Jersey in 1924, August 21st, 1924. Floyd Chester Galbraith. So what he did, he worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad when I was born. But then he changed jobs and he went into business and purchased a diner in New Jersey, and it's not too far from New Brunswick where he put the diner. And it was in a town of Russian and Polish immigrants. All the families were Russian and Polish immigrants, and most of the parents could not speak English at all. But their children went to school. And believe it or not, my first girlfriend was from a Russian family. I'll never forget her name. She was wonderful. The whole family. Stella Verbitsky. Oh, they were very wonderful people.
Yeah.
And boy, did they love this country. Oh. My mom was from a French family. Her full name was Abby Van Valkenburg Lamoureux, and she married my father Galbraith. And she was a organist and sang in a choir. And she was a homebody. Well, I had my first marriage. She passed away over 30 years ago, but my first marriage, I had a set of twins, boy and girl, Melanie and Curry, we called them, so they would be almost the same. Anyway, my daughter developed a chronic illness, a syndrome, where she had to lie down every 5 minutes. She opened a business out in Las Vegas. But then she developed this, and she had to close the business, and she could never marry, and she died when she was in her 60s. But my son still lives up in New Jersey. He and his family, they live up there. I had a sister. Her name was Priscilla, and it was strange, but when I was a child I couldn't pronounce her name, so I called her Paduta. And I still do. And she's older than I. She's still living up. She lives right across from where Billy Graham lives in North Carolina, along the coast. Yeah. Did I go to high school? I was held back twice in grammar school because my father put me to work in his diner when I was 5 years old, peeling potatoes and onions. So I was held back twice in grammar school, and I went to high school for about 2 years, and I quit and went in the Navy. The war came along, and I was held back twice in grade school because of it, and I never graduated from high school until I was discharged from the Navy in San Diego, California, and I went to night school and got my diploma. And I was 24 years old when I got my diploma. March of 1943, March 18th. I signed up. I wanted to get away from my father, for one thing.
Yeah.
So he was in the Army, and it's the strangest thing. But he was in the Army in France in the First World War in the 29th Infantry Division, which is the blue and gray, north and south. I have his picture up there with his uniform thing. It's a round circle with a blue and gray in it.
Nice.
And believe it or not, but in the invasion of Normandy, we carried the same division into France that he was in World War I, the 29th Division. Those poor souls caught hell. I saw so many get killed. I was one of the lucky ones. I was blown from a craft, but I was fortunate to be saved. But I saw so many of them that never got to the beach. They drowned. They had 100 pounds of equipment on their backs.
Yeah.
They went off the ramp of our craft, and we couldn't get all the way to the beach because it was low tide. So they went off and went down, never came back up. Terrible, terrible. I was very fortunate. I was blown from the craft, but I was saved. They put me on another craft to take care of me because they couldn't put me on a hospital ship because it was so full of wounded. And but eventually I managed to get back to my own craft. And then after the invasion of Normandy, we went down to the Mediterranean Sea from there. And we went to Tunisia, Bizerte in Tunisia, North Africa, Algeria, and all along North Africa. But then we went into Anzio, the invasion of Anzio and below Rome in Italy. And then we went from there to, I can't think of the name of the town anymore. It's near Marseille in southern France. We went through an invasion there also and carried troops into the beaches. And you know, it was something. But before I left that area, we pulled into Marseille Harbor, and our craft was a flat bottom landing craft, LST. And we went on the beach right near the entrance to the harbor, lowered the ramp, and I was, at the time, was a helmsman on the craft. I steered it because I used to be on boats before I went in the Navy, up in New York State, Seneca Lake, near Sampson Naval Base was. But anyway, on that beach, it was an amazing thing. There was a place where they carry people to die, what do you call it? Mortuary. And there was a wall in a field around it. Well, what happened was, we witnessed this. It was terrible. They brought some women that had collaborated with the Germans, marched them down the streets of Marseille completely naked. And they marched them into this field against the wall, and they got the firing squad, killed them all, put them in the mortuary.
French?
The French. Yeah, we carried the troops in, and they did most of the job. Of course, we had a lot of craft that were sunk, but we were fortunate to get through. My craft was one of the lowest numbers that were built, 53. Most of them were in the hundreds or higher. Yeah, they were built down in, I think it was Mississippi or Louisiana, where they built them. Well, they came from this country across the Atlantic with troops, and that's how they got over there. And as I say, after Normandy invasion, they went down to the Mediterranean. And it was strange, but after I got out of service, I decided, after I got out of service, I drove all over the country. I wanted to see the whole country. So I drove in every state but Oregon. Every state but Oregon. I met a girl in Minnesota and married her.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wonderful. Oh, that's a wonderful country up there. Minnesota. Minnesota. By the shores of the Minnetonka. Yeah. But after southern France, we went to Barcelona, Spain. From there, we went back across the Atlantic under convoy, destroyers, convoy, and back to Norfolk, Virginia. Well, I got leave finally, and that's the crew of the craft I was on. Most all of them are gone now, I think. But that was at the Hotel Martinique in New York City.
Oh, wow.
That's where they had the reunion. We came back. I was in overseas much longer after that, because we left Europe. We went across to Norfolk. From Norfolk, they put me on a different craft, and we went down through the Panama Canal. Went to Cuba first, Guantanamo Bay, and down the Panama Canal, through the Panama Canal, over to Hawaii, and we docked alongside of the ship that was sunk in Pearl Harbor, Arizona. We tied up alongside of that. But we got leaving there, and from there we went across the Pacific, through many islands, Saipan, Tinian, I don't know how many, and finally got over to Okinawa. That's just below Italy, or just below Japan. We participated in the invasion of Okinawa, which took quite a while. We were there a long time. I can't remember just how long now. But we carried troops there. Anyway, when that was over, they were preparing to end the war. Japan wanted to give up. But the entrance to Tokyo Bay was blocked by Japanese that sunk one-man submarines that they had. They were suicide submarines. When they went and torpedoed a ship, it was one-man sub. It would sink. But anyway, that's why they called them suicide subs. But they had to clear that harbor before our ships could enter. So they asked for volunteers. So you can imagine who volunteered. They put a diving suit on me. I went down and hooked onto them, and they yanked them out. I don't know how many I did, but quite a few. But finally we got them all out, and they put me on a oil tanker, USS Neches, AO-47. I'll never forget it. Something else. But this tanker fueled other ships, naval ships, and they would go down to the Persian Gulf and get the oil. Well, what happened was, when we got into the harbor, Tokyo Bay, along comes the Missouri battleship, and on it they had to surrender on the Missouri. And we fueled the Missouri, and I witnessed General MacArthur boarding the ship for the surrender. But I have a secret about this, that you never read it in the papers about Japan. Those people welcomed us with open arms. I got on a train in Yokosuka Naval Base there, and got on a train to Tokyo. There's a picture up there with me at in Tokyo with the Red Cross when the war was over. What happened with the people when they saw us on the train? They put their arms around us because they hated Hirohito.
Yeah.
They just hated him.
Yeah.
And they thanked us so much for what we did.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't believe it, really couldn't. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So after they signed the treaty, our ship had to leave Japan and go down to Arabia, which is 6,000 miles for oil. We went to Shanghai, Hong Kong. There was another port too, I can't remember the name now. It was a smaller one. But we went to Singapore. That is some town, Singapore was. Matter of fact, I have a chest in my bedroom that I bought there.
Really?
Out of teak wood.
Nice.
Beautiful chest. And it has animals on it, wild animals.
Yeah.
It's all carved on the chest.
Yeah.
I carried a 45 revolver.
Mm-hmm.
45 millimeter, yeah. I carried that with me all the time.
Yeah.
But we went down to Persian Gulf, and unbelievable, we were in Bahrain. and we went to Rasa Tanura, that's another port there, to get oil. And alongside the ship comes the head of Arabia
Really?
to see us and to welcome us. He waved to us. After that, we left there and we went to over to the Philippines, to Manila, and on back up to Japan with the oil for the people for their homes. Because the Japanese didn't have any oil and they had to get their oil from down in that area. So we supplied them with oil, their homes. Boy, they just couldn't get over it. Yeah. So I spent the next. I spent about the next. Let me think. 1945, the war was over. The next 4 years I spent doing that, going back and forth, and I never got home for almost all that time. I was away for almost all that time.
You going back and forth from Japan to Arabia?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On the oil tanker.
Yeah. Were you a merchant, or you were in the Navy?
Navy.
Yeah.
I became a navigator on charts, and I was a helmsman, and I also became a signalman with flags and
Yeah.
the light, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. All that was very interesting, you know. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
Of course, the war was another story, but
Yeah.
yeah.
You had mentioned that you went to Italy and helped give them supplies, and they all loved you. They loved the Americans.
Yeah.
They weren't big fans of Mussolini.
Well, invasion of Anzio below Rome, we had the invasion to cut off the Germans coming up from Africa, going back to Germany. And the Italians couldn't get over what we did for them. And you know something? After the service, I decided to take my son to Rome. And my son's boy. He was about 10, 11 years old, I think. So I took him over to Rome. And we traveled all around Rome, all around Italy, even into Switzerland. What a trip. And what a wonderful country. I'll tell you, if any countries in the world, that's the country I like to go to. And the people are so good. And it's such a wonderful country, too. It's really amazing. Oh, yes. That's when I took my son's boy to Rome. We went to the Vatican. But, you know, I'm not a Catholic. But we went to outside of the Vatican, and along comes Pope John Paul in his Pope-mobile, and he stopped and shook hands with us. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
And I told him I'm sorry. I forgot what I called him now.
Catholic. You're not a Catholic?
Pardon?
That you're not a Catholic?
No.
No,
Well,
you said, I'm sorry that I'm not a Catholic.
Yeah, that's what I said. He said, you know what he said to me? I don't care. He says, as long as you believe in the Lord. That's just what he said. I couldn't believe it. He almost put his arms around us. I'll never forget it. He was wonderful. You know, after we saw the Pope, we went into the Vatican, and they had like a class in there, in a room. And we were invited in there, and they told us all about the Vatican and the Pope. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. Yeah, they welcomed us.
That's awesome.
Isn't it? Really.
So you carried
believe
a book of scriptures with you the entire time you were in the war.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did. Yes, I have it. Mm-hmm.
And he read it every single day for the entire 6 years that he was in.
I have it in my room in there, I think.
Yeah, I took a picture of it.
Oh, did you?
Yes. And it's still in mint condition. He read it every single day, but it's still in mint condition.
Wow.
Yeah, every day it had a minister or a priest would write something on each page, and then on the bottom would be a prayer. for every day of the year. And I would read that every day that I was in service. You know,
Did you feel his
meant a lot to
protection?
me.
Did you feel his protection when you were in?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, I knew he was with me. I knew that. I had the feeling. And I'm sure he was, because for what I went through, he saved my life several times. Yeah.
What was the most horrific experience what was the scariest moment in the war?
Most serious moment?
Yeah.
Scariest.
Scariest was Normandy.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Because we went back and forth to England about 3 times to get troops and supplies and bring it back to Normandy. And then we left there, and it was still going on. And I just can't remember how long it was, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I think I have it listed on that piece of paper on the picture there, but
Okay.
I forget the dates.
Yeah.
It says June 6th, 1944. You have that on your hat. Through the
Oh,
July
yes.
1944. Yes, you have it on your hat.
Yes,
July.
it's June 6th.
Yes, it's on your hat.
6/6/44. That's what it was.
Yeah. 6644.
June 6th of 44. And you know, it was supposed to have been the day before, but there was a storm, and they had to change the day to the 6th. And wasn't that something? So it got to be the same numbers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
6644.
6644, yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, some of my best times when I was in Tokyo. I had some good times there. The people were so great. But I think my best times, of course, some of my best times when I was in New York, because that's where I got on my first craft. They sent me from there I go again, where I had my basic training, Newport, Rhode Island. They sent me down to New York to get a craft. And I had a good time in New York before I got on my craft. I enjoyed that a lot, you know. But I think San Francisco was one of my best places to go. That was great. I loved San Francisco. I left my heart in San Francisco. Well, of course, the people were so good, and we got around so much, and it was quite hilly. And I got to go under the bridge that goes
Golden Gate
Bridge. We went under that, the dock.
Oh yeah.
And then I was on a taxi, and I went over the bridge, and on the other side was the name of the town was Pittsburgh. I thought I was in Pepsi.
And
So boy, that's a fast trip.
and that's when Alcatraz was still in operation.
Yes, we went by Alcatraz when it was operating.
Wow.
Yeah. El Paso, I was in El Paso when I left the Navy. I didn't have any way to get home after I was discharged. So this general said, "You want to ride to El Paso, Texas?" on his private plane.
Nice.
Nice.
So I got a ride on his private plane from San Diego to El Paso. But then I had to hitchhike home for the rest of the way. Yeah.
Wow.
But in those days, people would pick you up, no problem.
It was safe.
It was.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of crazy people like today.
No.
No.
Today they don't.
No.
Very rare to ever see
Oh,
anyone
yeah.
out there.
Too many crazies.
Yeah, I know it.
Totally different.
But that was amazing, though, to be able to go all that distance.
You went from El Paso back to New Jersey?
Mhm.
Wow, that's a long way.
It took me a long time, you know. Yeah. Oh, after that, I just didn't know what to do because I hadn't had much education. So I found out that there was a school in Richmond, Virginia, Richmond Professional Institute of the College of William and Mary, which was a great school at that time. And this was where they they taught trades. So I decided I wanted to go in the sign business, making signs by hand. So I went in and learned that trade, and I came from there down to Florida, to Bradenton, below Tampa.
Yeah.
And I opened a store there, and I started my trade, lettering trucks and businesses all by hand. I still have my brushes, and what happened was, I even hate to mention it, computers came along and knocked me out of business. Killed my business.
When was that?
Oh, that's some time ago.
The 80s?
It could have been. Could have been. That when the computers came in. Yep. So my wife and I, she still lives here in another facility, but we moved from there over here because of the weather mainly. It was much too hot over there. I couldn't stand that heat. So we moved over here from Bradenton.
No.
I sit here and watch country music. That's about all I'm able to do. I used to letter birthday cards. Oh, I did, I don't know how many. All by hand. I would letter them, put a message in by hand, you know.
Yeah.
I loved that, doing that. I did that for all the people in here. But I don't anymore because I'm not that steady. I can't do it. But it reminds me of my dad's diner. When I worked there as a child, I missed a lot of schooling. My dad did it on purpose so I would miss school. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't allow to have a book in his house. He didn't want me to read.
Huh.
That's what my mom told me. But what happened was, in school, I got to the 8th grade, and I had a teacher who was a history teacher. I'll never forget her name. Now I do. Isn't that terrible?
I love that.
Ray Smith. Her name was Ray Smith. And you know, she taught me all I had to learn to get a diploma, or to get out of grade school. If it weren't for her, I would have never gotten to high school. It was amazing. I'll never forget her name for that reason. Fantastic. Oh, I know, it was Depression time. That's what we're talking about, Depression. He had me working there, and I would peel potatoes and onions, and I would go and start cooking and washing dishes. And in this diner, the sink was almost on the floor. I had to sit on the floor to wash dishes as a child.
Yeah.
And then I got to learn to flip burgers on the grill and flip eggs, you know, and all that for the customers. And outside were people lying in the streets, starving. These poor souls, you know. There were some that died in the streets. But the food that was left over from people in the diner, we would take it outside and give it to these poor souls.
Yeah.
It was called a town of South River, which is right next door to New Brunswick, where Rutgers University is. And as I said, they were mostly immigrants that lived there. But, oh, that was so sad to see those people.
This is the 30s? Yeah.
1929, Depression. And then some of them had children, you know, were starving. And, see them in the streets. Oh, it's all sad. Awful. I think the best time of my life was when I came out of the service and when I traveled all over the country. My dad was originally from Canada, his family. Hamilton, Ontario. Not too far from Niagara Falls area. And we would go up there occasionally when I was, before I went in service. My father had to go up there, family. And I think I mentioned that when I out of the service, I went to Canada, up through Maine, up to Quebec City. From Quebec City, I drove across Canada to Vancouver. What an experience. What gorgeous country. Oh, beautiful. Out in the western part, you know, the central part of Canada. That was one of my best times, I think, my traveling. You know. And you know, amazing thing, I was always careful driving, that I wouldn't hit someone. And I was careful with my speeding, you know. Never got a ticket driving all over the country. And of course in Jersey they were very strict for driving. You had to keep right. You couldn't use the left lane unless you were passing. Of course in Florida you can drive anywhere. A bunch of moronic idiots, I call them, to let them do that. Really. Because they block lanes, you know, you can't get through.
Yeah.
I think it's sick. It's a stupid police department. I hate them. Oh, I hate them. Because they gave me a ticket and I lost my license.
When did that happen?
That happened right. That's when I lived in Ponte Vedra, Solana Woods. I left my wife because we got into an argument and I didn't want to have any problems. There's fighting or anything like that, you know. So I left. And I'm going out of town and the police came behind me. My wife had called them that I left home. They were going to stop me, give me a ticket.
For what?
So I outran them. I just left. I left the town. I wasn't speeding, but I just kept going. I didn't stop because I knew what they were after. So I went to the American Legion in Jack's Beach from there.
What happened?
Well, my daughter-in-law and her husband came to the American Legion and told me that the police wanted me, that I have to come back home, which I did. I came back, and of course they took my license because I outran them. Yeah, I wasn't speeding or
Did
anything.
you get your license back?
No,
You're a rebel, Chet.
I know.
You're a rebel.
I'm a no good moron, they think.
Just like Johnny Cash.
Yeah. We're buddies. The
Okay, what is it?
Lincoln Continental Cabriolet. It has a wheel on the back and a trunk, and it's a convertible. It was built in 1948. I bought it second hand because of the price was too much new, you know. So I picked it up second hand at a good price. And it was amazing what I paid for it. It was really...
How much did you pay for it?
I think I have it marked on there,
Yeah, let me see.
but I can't remember.
It was $1,869.96.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
1,000?
Nope,
$1,869.
$1,869.96.
And it didn't have a whole lot of miles on it.